All right, let's dive right into this explainer and look at brands through the highly discerning and sometimes pretty ruthless lens of a creative director. We definitely aren't here to just admire pretty colors today. Instead, we're going to audit visual identities to spot those underlying structural design mistakes that slowly but surely erode brand equity. If you've ever wondered why certain brands effortlessly command premium pricing while others just look, well, kind of cheap, it almost always comes down to this. So, let's start with a brutal but absolutely critical question. As an auditor, I'm looking at your brand and asking, is this built for long-term consistency, or is it destined to completely fall apart the second it tries to scale? A disjointed collection of random assets is literally the fastest way to lose a customer's trust before they even read a single word of your product description. Here's our roadmap for today's masterclass. We'll kick off with the 7-second audit, break down systems versus deliverables, and hunt for multi-channel fragmentation. Then, we'll expose accessibility gaps, dive into the psychology of consistency, and finally show you how to build a living system. Let's jump straight into Section 1, the 7-second audit, where we test the immediate visceral impact of your brand. Consider the sheer, overwhelming speed of human cognition for a second. Neuromarketing research shows that our brains actually process visual imagery up to 60,000 times faster than written text. 60,000! You simply don't have the time to logically explain your value. A consumer is using fast, intuitive System 1 thinking to decide if you're premium or unreliable in just 7 seconds, and they're basing that entirely on visual cues. Moving on to Section 2, Systems versus Deliverables. Let's evaluate those core visuals. You see, because those first impressions happen so incredibly fast, a visual identity alone, like a static logo file or color palette, is really just a deliverable. Branding design, however, is the strategic, living system that ensures those assets actually evolve and apply consistently everywhere. A major red flag in any audit is discovering a gorgeous logo, but finding absolutely zero rules on how to actually use the thing. Think about how a creative director starts building out that system. It begins by strategically auditing conceptual territories. Take a concept like a literary sanctuary with its calm, reflective intimacy. Contrast that with something like a curated explorer, which relies on curious, bold, and intelligent aesthetics. Before we ever lock in a hex code or a font, we have to ask, does this visual language genuinely express the brand's strategy? Now that we have a theoretical system in place, let's head to Section 3, spotting fragmentation and hunt for the multi-channel threat. It is wild how easily things can just fall apart across different touchpoints. Does your visual system actually survive the leap from a physical billboard to a tiny mobile screen? When web teams use heavy, complex fonts that refuse to load, bounce rates absolutely skyrocket. When social teams go rogue and use unapproved trendy colors, brand recognition vanishes. These aren't just minor aesthetic slip-ups, right? They are massive revenue leaks caused by a fragmented system. Which brings us to Section 4, finding accessibility gaps. This is the ultimate usability test. Look, typography accessibility is a non-negotiable metric, period. Your text hierarchy has to guide a user's attention effortlessly, completely regardless of their screen size or their visual ability. A good auditor looks at your typefaces and asks one simple question: are these highly legible, or are they honestly just here to look pretty? Because a beautiful design that a user can't actually read is a fundamental failure. When I'm auditing a brand today, I'm instantly scanning for a few massive red flags. Low contrast between text and background images, it's incredibly common, and it is instantly frustrating for the user. What about complex display fonts used in long-form paragraphs? That creates massive digital friction. And ignoring web content accessibility guidelines literally means you are actively excluding potential customers. If your system breaks on a mobile screen, your brand just isn't adapting. And the commercial stakes attached to these font choices are staggering. Research actually shows that simply utilizing highly clear, accessible fonts can increase consumer trust by up to 40%. Not only that, but proper typography hierarchy can boost conversion rates by 35%. Good design isn't just art, it is commercial utility. Make your brand easy to read, and you'll make it a whole lot easier for people to hand over their money. Let's dig a bit deeper into the cognitive science behind all this in Section 5, the psychology of consistency, and how to avoid cognitive overload. It really all goes back to Gestalt psychology. The core issue here is that the human brain naturally seeks patterns. It doesn't look at a web page as a separate logo, a font, and a button. It perceives one unified whole. Any inconsistency, even a slightly off-brand color, introduces cognitive overload. The brain literally stops processing your message and gets distracted by the friction, subconsciously flagging your brand as unprofessional and unreliable. To build a solid defense against that cognitive friction, a creative director has to enforce incredibly strict, documented rules. We don't just casually tell a team to use dark blue. No way. We dictate use hex 283838. By locking in those exact systemic color values, we completely eliminate subjective ad hoc changes by junior designers or outside agencies. So, we've spotted the mistakes, and we understand the psychology of why they hurt the brand. Let's finish up with Section 6, building a living system for our final review. Your brand guidelines literally can't be some static PDF gathering dust in a Google Drive somewhere. Step 1, you have to build living digital systems in platforms like Notion or Figma so everyone has a single updated source of truth. Step 2, relentlessly test your edge cases. Does your logo actually survive being scaled down to a tiny smartwatch screen? Does it pass accessibility contrast checks? And Step 3, you need to conduct periodic audits to ensure your visuals are continuously driving your core business goals. So, take a really hard look at your own brand materials today. Scroll through your website, check out your social feed, look at your physical packaging. With your new Creative Directors Toolkit top of mind, ask yourself, is your brand built as a resilient, accessible system that's ready to evolve, or is it a fragile collection of disjointed aesthetic choices just waiting to fragment?